The iRacing IndyCar Open Series continues its trip east. After a dalliance through the French countryside, we land at the track formerly known as Twin Ring Motegi. Welcome back on a Monday night to iRacing and to RaceSpotTV for coverage of 2022 Season 3 of your iRacing Open Championship Series. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, joined along, as always, by the one and only Andrew Kinsella, and we head to a track that has seen IndyCar racing, albeit a long time ago, in a very different form to what we've got in store for you today. We're here in Japan for a fascinating back-to-back doubleheader of oval action, and Andrew, today at Twin Ring Motegi, with hot track temperatures, drivers are unsure what to expect.
The whirlwind iRacing IndyCar World Tour is coming to an end here at Twin Ring Motegi. 3 continents in 3 weeks, and this one should be a very interesting race in front of us here today. We've got some very wide straightaways, very wide corners, but not very much banking and not a lot of grip out on that track. It's going to be very interesting here today.
The speedway around 1.5 miles here today with that 10 degrees of banking. The last time that the IndyCars raced around here midway through the 2000s, of course, they came back a year after the final oval race to challenge themselves on the road course. And after back-to-back road course races, this is a very different sort of a fight. But the championship standings have not changed too much, with Brandon Traynor still leading the way, although we are yet to factor in the 4 drop weeks that will play a factor in the championship. 8 championship rounds will count through the 12, making sure that you are allowed 4 mistakes, or 4 no-shows, if you will, as well. And Andrew, when I look at this, the thing that stands out to me after the record points haul in the last season, Brandon Traynor is not being allowed to run away. David Porcelli is continuing to show some impressive speed in the Satellite Racing machine.
David Porcelli absolutely keeping Brandon Traynor honest here, and he's really been putting the pressure on him, and particularly last week out at the Circuit de la Sarthe he showed that he had the ability to finish the race out as well, and that was what cost Brandon Traynor there. But you look down, Connor Harrington not letting those two out of his sights either, and when you factor in drop weeks, there are results that can drop out of here, so Harrington definitely not out of it. Rashad Craig, Lyon, Bodafor, Steele, all in a very tight battle for 4th there as well.
So qualifying about to be finished with about 30 seconds left on the clock right now. Drivers, again, 5 minutes track to themselves, 2 attempts to set the fastest lap time that they can. The pressure is truly on. Currently, the streak of poles that Brandon Traynor has enjoyed will come to an end with Christopher Demerit at the top. But when you think about this track, Andrew, when you talk about the racing, what comes to your mind?
I think throughout the years we've seen some really tight action here. One of the things that you have to be aware of is just how wide these straightaways are, and it can really create some havoc on the straightaways, particularly if you have a large draft pack. Here today, though, I think it's going to be all about the tires and taking care of them over the course of this long run. The track temperature is fairly high here today, so it's going to be wearing those tires out pretty well.
Well, from up above, we look down at the track formerly known as Twin Ring Motegi. Today, for 133 laps, it's the focus of the iRacing IndyCar Open Series and the 23-odd drivers that are stacked up and ready to go here today. Let's run you down through the starting grid. With no surprise, it is a Team i5G car at the front, albeit in the form of Christopher Demerit in the #1 machine. Brandon Traynor will line up alongside with just over a 100th of a second splitting the front two. Christian Steele makes an i5G 1, 2, and 3 inside of Andreas Ike on the second row of the grid. Marco Brazil will line up alongside with Rodrigo Franzoni in an all-Brazilian affair on row number 3. From row 4, it's Brendan Lichtenberg and Andrew Wood, Adam Crane, Rashad Craig making up the rest of the top 10. Second in the points, but 11th on the grid. David Porcelli has some work to do, but can work with his teammate in front of him to try and dice his way forward. Matt Taylor on the outside of row number 6. Aaron McQuarrie will roll from 13th, Gil Ribeiro on his outside. John Bodafor in the Alpine Stars geodesic racing machine squeaks into the top split. Robin Glenix will line up on his outside. Laura Gerhard, the sole representative of Powerslide Motorsports here today, will share row 9 with Ken Cram, making up the rest of the top 20, David Hanger and Kevin Birrell. Only one more car with a lap time on the board. Jeff Yeager with Julian Pastor and Isaac Smith making up the rest of the 23 cars that are getting ready to roll. And with 133 laps, Andrew, what are we thinking about in terms of strategy as the drivers get set to go racing?
Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating here. This is one of those tracks where I think you're going to see a lot of drivers tempted by that undercut. It's going to be some definite tire fall off as the run goes on. So the question is, when do you pit? When do you come in and take those 4 fresh tires? Do you go all the way to the end of the run, or do you maybe come in a little bit early and try and make some passes up when the field's all strung out and you have fresh tires and they don't? So I think that's going to be the key thing to look for in terms of strategy.
And the one thing that drivers are being contemplating and discussing in the build-up to this one, Andrew, is that change to the aero model. What does that mean for the drivers here compared to some of the races they would have done at Motegi in the past?
I think it definitely does help them a little bit. It's not a huge change, but it does change things just a little bit, particularly for drivers who are a little bit further back in the pack. If you're in the top 2, top 3, you won't notice a huge difference, but it's the dirty air 5, 6, 7 cars back in line that's improved the most in this newest version of the draft model. So hopefully it'll result in some closer action here today, and we'll be able to see some nice passing on track.
So with all that said, which name springs to mind? Who do you think comes out on top here today?
I think you can't look past the pole sitter Christopher Demerit here, obviously one of the most experienced IndyCar drivers on iRacing, and an oval specialist here, and then Brandon Traino, his teammate, right alongside him. But if I'm looking at a dark horse, maybe Andrew Wood, after all of the success that he's had this weekend in both the Classic IndyCar Series and the Lionheart Speedway Series.
Well, the field's going to roll down towards the start-finish line. Pace car pulls off. The field's in control of Team i5G, lined up 1, 2, and 3 to get underway in the land of the rising sun. We're racing at Motegi for round 5 of the championship. Still building up momentum, but 1, 2, 3 single file, a bit more side by side, about 5th on back, nice and tidy, but Demerit will lead from Traino, Steele, Icon, Franzoni, the rest of the top 5.
A really nice clean start, and you can already see some dicing back, particularly in the back of the field. You really are seeing a lot of drivers fighting for position here, and it's very important to get your passes done early, because again, we talked about this already, but the tires are going to go away quickly here, so while they're still fresh, you're going to see a lot of dicing in the back and the midfield here.
This seems to be where the action is. Wood on the outside as Lichtenberg looks down low. Brazil will hold off the both of them. A satellite racing car on the outside up into the wall is 3 wide. Matt Taylor will take it to the inside of both of those satellite racing machines. He'll slide his way forward, but here comes the challenge back from Porcelli around the outside, using all the banking to build up the speed.
And that's one of the nice things about the Motegi Speedways. Because it is so wide, you have so many different ways to get through the corner. You can see Matt Taylor really working that high line up there, but the satellite racing drivers, they're working the bottom lane, and you have high lines in both 3 and 4, but also 1 and 2 as well that you can take advantage of. So a lot of different ways to get through the corner, a lot of ways to find some clean air, and it really does produce some exciting action.
Top 2 breaking away from Steele. 9/10 the gap between 2nd and 3rd. Andreas Eicher further 9/10 further back. A bit of side-by-side on the edge of the top 10, but with the importance of clean air here today, we are seeing already the field starting to stretch out, gaps beginning to form. Which cars are looking the best? Well, clearly the i5G machine, Porcelli trying to fight back on Taylor, who migrates up high.
Yeah, look at Taylor taking that nice high line there, using that momentum, and he's closing quickly up on the back of Rashad Craig as well. Oh, we have an incident off of 2.
Gil Ribeiro, but he saved that machine, and somehow looks like there's no damage to that Dallara IR18. The number 19 seems to have survived. We'll grab a look at what happened to him, but his countryman is side by side with Brendan Lichtenberg on the run into turn number 1.
Yeah, that was an excellent save there for Ribeiro. He was fully sideways coming off a 2 there, and I'm not sure how he kept it out of that inside wall, but it looks like he was successful in doing that, but he's lost a lot of time in doing so.
Tires will be heated to the max, and he'll have to cool them off. David Henger, we can inform you, has rolled onto pit road, so he may be out of the race as they fight for 4th. Andreas Eicher, Rodrigo Franzoni, about 1.3 clear of this battle for 6th on back already, stretching out inside of the top 3, with even Traino falling back 0.4 of a second. When it comes to thinking about pit entry here, Andrew, what's the treachery to think about?
Yeah, it is definitely a difficult pit entry. The main thing here with the pit entry is that the wall comes up really, really quickly when you get off of 4 there. So you basically have to enter in the middle of turn 4, and there is a transition there, so you have to be very careful not to hook your rear tire, but also you have to be very careful to get slowed down in time, because that timing line is very close to the edge of that wall, and a number of drivers I've seen over the years have had races ruined simply because they didn't get there. Oh, another spin off of 2.
And again, the caution doesn't fly. It's Ken Cram the second time around that will experience the same troubles, albeit with significantly more damage than what we saw with Gil Ribeiro, who no longer is the final car still running. You'd assume that potentially for Cram, he's going to have to take a tow back to pit lane. But let's take a look at what happened here to Ribeiro. You see the kiss in the wall, and then the flirting with disaster. That left rear inches away from the wall.
That was mere inches from disaster there for Gil Ribeiro. I don't know how he kept it out of that inside wall. Great car control, but just unfortunately was a little too high on the exit. But wow, he got so close to that wall there, Arjuna.
That's a save that anyone would be proud of, that is for sure. Andrew Wood in front now of Marco Brazil as they fight for 7th on back. You can see the gap between 1st and 7th already up to 6.5 seconds. So the impetus is on in these early stages to get your way forward, and that's key when we start thinking about any potential restarts after a caution.
Yeah, absolutely. Track position is going to be important here as this run goes on. Particularly, we've seen sort of a propensity for the cars to go down onto the apron when they have an incident, so cautions may be few and far between here. We'll have to see if that proves true as the run goes on, but right now, if you're Wood, you basically just want to be slowly and patiently getting back onto the back of Brendan Lichtenberg there. You're a little bit further back in the draft, but the nice thing about the draft model in these cars is the draft model does extend a fair ways behind it. Oh, and we've got a caution here, Arjuna.
Julian Pastor seems to have stopped on track and out of turn 4. Tires still going up in smoke. We'll be back on track and back in focus, but we'll have to see exactly why. We slow things down for the first time today. It's not the first incident that we've had by any means. It's the first significant enough for the iRacing automatic caution system to throw the yellow. Let's take a look at this RaceSpotTV replay. It was darkening on the track. I was noting that down, and out of turn 4, looks like just a little bit too much weight jacker potentially, and then he gets clipped as he has a lazy spin around.
Yeah, that was unfortunate there. Yeah, you just saw the back end get loose, and then the other car nowhere to go there, unfortunately. As the car in front, the purple and white car there was just spinning right in front of him. Kevin Burrell, absolutely nowhere he could go. So that's going to be some significant damage for Burrell. But yeah, I think it was probably, if I'm honest, I think it'll be the tools that did it there. It just way too early in the corner for it to be anything but that. Now we have what happened to Ken Cram here, and you can see he got a little bit of the apron, came up, hit the outside wall, and then unlike Ribeiro, he just went straight down, basically nose first into that inside wall.
And while all of that is happening, have we had a split on pit lane? It's early in this race, still on lap 13 of 133. About 8 stay out, 9 stay out. The rest of the field down on pit road. David Porcelli, Taylor, Craig, and Crane, the first 4 of those that box.
And this is going to be very interesting. This is going to be a lot of good information, both for the drivers that stay out, but the drivers who pit as well, for later on in the race, just how well these new tires will fare compared to the drivers on the older tires here. I think it's a smart move, especially if you're in the back, to come down and take this pit stop. But if you're the leaders, you're going to be watching with a very wary eye out the back to see what kind of progress that they can make through the field.
And you can see it's definitely darker than it was a couple of moments ago, but the track conditions still quite warm. 21 in the air, baking the track to a 45 degrees Celsius mark, 90 degrees of humidity, not unexpected, with gentle gusts of about 7 kilometers an hour as we're past the midway marker of July, the midway marker of 16th of July here in our virtual Motegi. Surprises from the first stint, Andrew? Anything popping out in your mind?
I think I was a little bit surprised by just how well the drivers were able to draft. For the most part, they were able to take some different lines through the corners and really use these long straightaways that you have here at Motegi. So it definitely looks like we're going to have more passing than we've had in the last year or so with this new tire model here. So that's definitely a positive sign for racing going forwards. And if we can get some cooler track temps, as it's been trending so far, that would be a great thing for racing.
You can see yellow flag in hand of Barney for the time being, should be switched over to the green next time around. Of course, so much history here at Motegi, including a rather underrated Grand Prix layout. And if you enjoy watching the Lionheart IndyCar series live here on RaceSpotTV, well, guess what? We have a doubleheader of Motegi coming up later this year. Andrew, we're going not just back to this oval, but Grand Prix racing as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of the ones who's more excited for the oval than the road course for the Lionheart series. I will admit that you and I differ on the quality of the Motegi track, at least in the IndyCar. But no, this is a fantastic facility, and one of the things about it is both the oval and the road course in sim is very, very smooth. And again, you have very wide pavement here that just allows for really good racing. So very nice facility. I wish that the oval in the real world wasn't as damaged as it is and we could go back here in the real world for racing, but unfortunately it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Nowadays the oval used more as a parking lot, unfortunately then a racing facility. The Grand Prix layout still gets plenty of action with the likes of Super Formula and Super GT, but here today with the caution lights still on, so going around for one more lap at this 1.5 mile facility. 23 has become 21. Julian Pastor, Ken Cram both have retired. Didn't see what happened to David Hanger, but he's rolling, albeit 10 laps down. Gil Ribeiro pulls it back onto pit road. After his miraculous save, he's been bringing that car down onto the lane to try and get some repairs. You'd have to think, Andrew, that's the right front, given that he would have bumped it into the wall before drifting all the way down to the inside wall.
Yes, I definitely suspect some suspension damage for Ribeiro there, which is unfortunate with the quality of the save that he had, but it is one of those things as well. If you're in the back, you might as well come in at the end of this caution just to get as much fuel and as fresh tires as you can for this restart, so there's no harm in the position he is coming down with one to go here.
So it is going to be lap 17 when we get back underway. Track is very, very dark. You can see how wide it is as well. Wide it is as well, even. When we saw the Lionheart Retro Series come here to Motegi last year, the race that we try not to remember, they managed to fit 5 or 6 Lotus 79s across the track for a moment until it inevitably all ended in disaster. We're not looking to see any of that today. We've already seen in the first run, it's very difficult to pass the further forward that you are. Christopher Demerit has led every single lap so far today. He picks up the pace and gets us back underway at Motegi. It's an i5G 1, 2, and 3. Andreas Ike a little too far back to try and make anything happen. If anything, Andreas Ike looking more backwards than in front of him. Here comes Rodrigo Franzoni. Brendan Lichtenberg trying to work his way forward too.
Yeah, and this caution was definitely fortuitous for the likes of Franzoni, Lichtenberg, and Wood. It allowed them to sort of compact back up after they took a while to get around Marco Brazil in that first segment. But I also want to draw your attention, we are still having our track temperature fall. We are down to 106 Fahrenheit, so that's around 43, I believe, degrees Celsius. So we are definitely cooling this track temp off rapidly with the dark cloud cover that you see here.
And so keep an eye on that. If it warms up, if it brightens up, that will change the tire wear potentially, albeit very slightly. Maybe a car running up high into the wall. Matt Taylor in front of him as Demerit goes faster yet. Bodefor and Brazil side by side. Bodefor's been working his way forward, +7, although taking advantage of cars rolling onto pit road. Brazil going backwards, 4 positions lost and looking a little bit squirrely.
And we know that Marco loves running the car as trimmed out as possible, and that's probably not the best strategy here. So he's probably experienced a little bit of oversteer, particularly on corner exit. These are very tricky corners to get out of Arjuna. As particularly turn 4, it tends to really catch you out as the track almost falls away a little bit on exit. So that's definitely something to watch for, particularly as the tires start to wear here.
Brendan Lichtenberg will look down low on Franzoni on the entry into turn 3. Franzoni will run all the way through the corner with a little bit more speed, but Lichtenberg, with the setup that he's running, able to make the low line work nice and aggressively on exit, still side by side through the flat out entry into turn 1.
Yeah, really nice side-by-side action here. You can tell that Lichtenberg's probably a little bit faster than Franzoni at this stage of the race, but he can't make that inside work quite well enough, and Franzoni's just able to keep that car wound up on the outside, keep that momentum up, as Lichtenberg really drifted almost into the side of Franzoni there.
You have to assume Lichtenberg running a car similar to the trio at the front of the field, so if you want an indication of how hard you have to work to get on through, look no further than what we're seeing right now. Taylor down low on Porcelli, a battle that's been going on for many a lap so far. Porcelli with the up and under, not going to get it done just yet. We'll tuck back in line. Satellite Racing cars tucked in 11th and 12th, not making any forward progress just yet.
No, not really going forward, but at least they're not going back either, Arjuna, so that's a positive sign for them. Some of the other teams experiencing a little bit more issues in terms of their race setup, but definitely you have to think that Porcelli was hoping for a little bit more out of this race here today, particularly with how strong Brandon Traino's doing up in second. It's definitely not the best case scenario for his title challenge here.
I would be remiss if I didn't also point out that for Taylor, Porcelli, Crane, those are the first 3 cars that came down onto pit road, maybe just trying to offset themselves on the fuel cycle, but for the time being, the 9 that stayed out still run inside the top 9. We work lap 24 of 133. Lichtenberg has got in front of Franzoni, now in front of him. We'll look to try and work on the sole team talent car inside of the top 5, Andreas Eick, but we of course have Andrew Wood back in 7th. You alluded to it at the start of the race. Andrew Wood with a very successful weekend, cross of multiple eras of IndyCars available on iRacing.
Yes, on Saturday was the Indy 500 for the Lionheart Speedway Series in the DW12, finishing first there for Andrew Wood, his first Indy 500 win in any style of IndyCar here on iRacing, and then a second place in the Classic IndyCar Series at the Nashville Superspeedway on Sunday, and then finally his tour of the IndyCar here on iRacing ends with the IR18 here today. But so far, it's only been about a 7th place running for Andrew Wood, and he doesn't seem to be making very much progress on Franzoni right now. But one car that is making progress is Botafour on the back of him. He's actually putting some pressure on. Meanwhile, Taylor around Brazil here.
That's the first car on fresher tires to make up a position. So sliding on through is the 16 and Glennox and Craig. Swap around for number 13. There will go on past Isaac Smith as well. Craig in those Indy Alliance Racing green and silver colors. Try and hold it around the outside of turn 2 where you can flat out get the momentum off the corner. And indeed, yes, he will hold on. Did see an interesting point thrown out by Jason Brophy, who is blaming his lack of participation today, not on the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, but instead on the fact that he's moving, but he's not got much time to get set up for a Lionheart IndyCar Series race at Mosport, Canadian Tire Motorsports Park this coming Wednesday. So we'll call questionable on the excuse there. But the point being, Andrew, that not much downforce on the rear of these cars.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting observation, particularly with how much these drivers are struggling in the dirty air here. You would think that they would want to put as much downforce on these cars as you can, but the thing about that is that it is a trade-off between downforce and drag, so sometimes you need to trim it out just a little bit more than you're comfortable with in order to get the momentum up on these straightaways, particularly with how fast the i5G cars are. I think that some of their competitors were looking to see if they could find a different sort of advantage here.
Andreas Eick now slides to 5th. Lichtenberg makes it a Team i5G 1, 2, 3, 4. Although they are starting to break themselves apart, the smallest gap, I should say, amongst the 4. Christian Steele to Brandon Traino, 7/10 of a second. Although Traino's trying to close on demerit. The longer we go with green flag runs, the more of a possibility, the more of a reality that lap traffic is going to be. With 21 cars still left on the track, they are fairly spaced out, but how will your lead cars handle the possibility of lap traffic?
Yeah, and I think that will definitely be very telling in terms of what kind of pace that these i5G cars can do more in that traffic rather than on their own here. So far it's been fairly easy for them. They're 1, 2, 3. The only driver that's really had to come up through any sort of traffic so far has been Brendan Lichtenberg, and he's got most of his work done right after the cautions have come out. So what will happen when these drivers start to face some heavier traffic as the stint goes on? Will they be able to make any passes there?
It got bright for a moment. It's looking a little brighter now, but it is still relatively dark around the track. And if you look at the conditions, it's cooled off a couple degrees more, albeit not to a point where we're going to be emphasizing it too much, but it's just something to keep in mind. We talk all this time about in-car tools and staying proactive rather than reactive. It's just another foible to be thinking about over the course of these races. Taylor, by the way, after getting past Brazil, has been able to open up a 2-second advantage over Gaggle on behind. David Porcelli and Adam Crane have been able to do nothing to throw their way past on Marco Brazil.
Yeah, and I think that the Satellite Racing team right now, they're sort of not able to sort of maximize their corner exits at this point, and that's where Brazil is being able to beat them, is really sort of mid-corner to exit. They're getting some good runs down the straightaways, but because of the aero wash that they're getting off of Brazil, they're just not able to really get close enough to make a move.
Robin Glennox, Isaac Smith fighting over 13th position. The Michigan native of Glennox will hold on for the time being in the dirty air. It's all about setting it up, at least for the time being. Maybe if we get to the end, we get a late race restart, we might see a little bit of chaos, a little bit of calamity, and cautions breed caution, so always worth keeping that in mind. Winding up lap 35, though, Demerit at the front of the field is surely not far away, Andrew, from coming down to pit road for the very first time.
Yeah, you would think that it would be that they'll be coming down here in the next 5 to 10 laps or so. You can't go too much longer than that around here, although you do get some off throttle time through turns 3 and 4 that does allow you to fuel save just a little bit, and depending on where you're letting off and how much brake you're using, you can actually fuel save a fair bit around here. So it'll be definitely interesting to see who comes down pit road when in this sequence.
Smith on past Glennox for 13th position. There's a lot of chatter about excuses in our YouTube chat right now, and I do agree. The only acceptable excuse for missing a Monday night race, other than, of course, being up here in the commentary booth, which excuses quite conveniently Andrew and myself, but is NASA. So Jacob Oster is excused. Jason Brophy, Evan Adams, definitely not excused. 1.5, though, at the front of the field. Demerit has continued to build up the advantage over Treno. Steele in behind as well for the 1.3, 1.4 back. For Treno, for Steele, what can they be thinking about, Andrew, at this point if they want to try and leapfrog their teammate?
Yeah, I think number one thing is they have to be considering what they're going to do with their pit stops, because as you can see, it's very difficult for the cars to follow a car that's in clean air. So if you're Treno, if you're Steele, you might be looking to come down maybe a few laps early, a few laps later, do something different compared to Christopher Demerit and try and get that track position, because again, it'll be very difficult if you do get out in front of Demerit for Demerit to get back by you.
It's a big week for iRacing because it's the second annual iRacing special event partnered up with the National MS Society. However, it's the first, I believe, Peachtree 3, which is by far the most tongue-twisting name you could give to an iRacing special event. But this Thursday, live on the front page of Twitch, the iRacing Esports Network will have a showcase of charity and of fun as well. Bodefor and Wood are fighting for 7th spot, but if you've ever wanted to donate money to make sure that Chad Knaus's life was absolute misery, this is your opportunity. You wanted to make sure Nick Ottinger enjoyed a couple of drive-through penalties? This is your opportunity. Steve Myers, iRacing CEO, ever wanted him to have to listen to one of your terrible ideas? This might be your opportunity, but I don't know exactly if it is. So join us on Thursday, the iRacing Esports Network, for the Peachtree 3 benefiting the National MS Society. Wood on the outside, Bodefor down low, and for a man that drives basically by himself in that Alpine Star geodesic racing machine, John Bodefor has shown up to fight.
He absolutely has, and he's got a car to do it with as well. He's just dominating that low line as Wood gets a little bit loose coming off of turn 4. That'll allow Bodefor to get up in front of him and set sail after Rodrigo Franzoni. But Bodefor's car looks very, very strong here. I would say he's probably the next strongest car after the i5G quartet up at the front.
Which is saying something. To put it in context, the iRating system, the ranking system that iRacing uses, usually we have John Bodefor as one of the first in the road course races, 1, 2, 3 in those numbers, because car numbers correspond to ranking of iRatings in this race. John Bodefor is the number 17 car in this race. When he returned to the series at the Nordschleife last season, he said that he was going to be doing more of this. That included the ovals. It's always nice to see someone back that up, because the beauty of IndyCar, diversity of tracks.
Absolutely, and I think it goes to show that if you give the ovals a chance, even if you're traditionally a road course racer, you can fall in love and get hooked pretty quickly. It's a different style of racing compared to what you do on the road courses in the IndyCar, but it's no less fun, it's no less challenging as well. A lot of road racers tend to write off ovals as just turning left, but it's much, much more than that, and I think Bodefor has shown that not only in his struggles, but also in his success in learning how to do this and the challenge that he's faced, and he's really rising to that challenge.
First car with a green flag pit stop will be Rodrigo Franzoni. That was a lot of smoke on the road to pit entry as well. Now, has Franzoni gotten away without a penalty? I don't think he has. I think Rodrigo Franzoni is sped on pit entry.
Yeah, that was certainly a lot of smoke coming in there, and we'll know very quickly whether or not Franzoni was able to get away with it, but I think it'd be more likely than not that he's got a penalty here.
Grab a look at the replay as he's entering onto pit road. Well, he's late commitment, slam dunk penalty. You can see him locking up and still struggling to slow down, and with the car stationary, it's confirmed Rodrigo Franzoni's race interrupted by a speeding penalty. He'll spend about 50 seconds total in pit road. Lap traffic starting to be a factor, but if anything, the gap has increased. Demerit now 1.7 clear of Brandon Traino. The gap continues to just grow up.
And Demerit is one of those drivers that when you give him a lead like this, he's not one to typically let go of it very easily. And certainly Brandon Traino is one of the most accomplished drivers in the IR18, but over the course of the entire existence of the IndyCar on iRacing, I don't think that there's a more accomplished driver, at least on the oval tracks, than Christopher Demerit is.
He's got that weird driving style, though. I'm never going to let him get away with that. Unglennick sails around the outside of Adam Crane. Like I said, those satellite racing machines, not really, well, firing off well in race trim. They seem to be struggling. Porcelli, you'd usually assume that with Marco Brazil running presumably lower downforce, maybe on older tires as well, for something to be slipped around there, but it hasn't. Brandon Traino, though, trying to get the undercut working, is down to pit road.
And this doesn't surprise me. He wasn't making any progress on Christopher Demerit, so as we said, he needed to do something a little bit different, figure out a way to maybe get a little bit of an undercut going, and I think that's what Traino's doing. I wouldn't be surprised, though, to see Demerit in the next couple of laps to cover that off.
So there's a look at Traino on pit road as Demerit will sweep back around in towards turn number 1. Traino nice and tidy on pit lane. No mistakes there. Perfect execution from the former NASCAR pit road worker. Brazil looks to be down on pit road as well. The flurry of stops is beginning.
It's definitely on here for the pit stop cycle, and the big thing for Brandon Traino now is he's got to make sure that no cautions come out, and that's one of the things here at Motegi, because you saw just how treacherous that pit in is with the pit entry of Rodrigo Franzoni. But another thing that can happen is that a car can spin very easily in that turn 4 area, so Brandon Traino, he's going to be holding his breath for the next 5 to 10 laps while this pit cycle works its way through. You
can see on the track map that there really isn't too much clean air. There's a pocket exiting turn 2 right now, maybe a few bubbles on the start-finish line for the time being, but there really isn't much place to hide. Traino had worked on some traffic before the pit road entry. He's got to do it again down the inside. Fresh tires, no concern for the number 2 Apex Racing team with Team i5G machine of Brandon Traino. Already, though, working now up towards lap number 3. We're yet to see your leaders dive onto pit road, but right on cue, nice and tidy, Demerit hits the lane.
And Brendan Lichtenberg following as well. Lichtenberg opting to get down off the banking a little bit sooner than Demerit, and sometimes that allows you to push the entry just a little bit more and get a little bit braver on the brakes, because you do have to be very careful as you're coming off the banking on the brakes. But this is going to be all important for Christopher Demerit here. He's got to get out in front of Brandon Traino here, or else it's going to be very difficult for him to repass Traino later in this race.
Oh, a little bit sideways as he drops off the jacks and gets onto the power. Battle for the net race lead, rolls off of pit road as Christian Steele dives down. It's Demerit, his teammate, that's exiting. Traino's got the speed, but does he have the advantage? Neck and neck on the exit, but Traino around the outside takes over the net lead of the race.
And that was a very important sequence of events there for Brandon Traino. He needed to get out in front of Christopher Demerit, and he did exactly that. And it was all down to being able to be fully at speed when Demerit was trying to get up his speed. So now it's going to be very telling here. Will Demerit be able to use some fresh tires here to get back around Traino, or does Traino now have a stranglehold on the lead of this race?
And you saw Steele just leaving the access road. He is a world behind, almost 6 full seconds away from the race lead. So we wait and see. Andreas Eick, the last car of those yet to pit in this race. From 2nd through 12th, cars that pitted under the only caution that we've had so far today. Working to the halfway mark of the race, Andrew Wood, the latest car to box.
Yeah, so the pit cycle almost complete here, but the important thing is, as you mentioned, those cars that haven't come down pit road yet, who did come down on that first caution, what that's going to do is anyone who is behind Andreas Eick right now, or as Andreas Eick actually comes into the pit lane, but anyone who's 1 lap down, they are still at risk of being caught 1 lap down, because Matt Taylor is going to the lead of this race, but there's still a number of drivers behind him who just came down pit road, so they're all still in the danger zone.
Fortunately, the numbers that Andrew is referring to are small. It's only Beaudefort, Wood, Brazil, at least for now, that are counted as 1 lap down. David Henger still 10 laps down and persevering, trying to pick up the pieces as best he can. So about 35 minutes left in this race to go. Not even at the halfway marker. Traino and Demerit continue to go. Fresher rubber, fastest lap last time by for Traino with a 27.227. In fact, excuse me, not the last time by, but in one of these recent laps. The pace for the leaders, 28.1, Andrew. How does that fare out when you look forward to the end of this race?
Yeah, well, I think the thing that sticks out to me about the pace is there was only about 4 or 5 tenths of a second a lap of fall off over the course of the run. So it's not as big a time fall off as we're thinking, but it definitely, you could tell that the grip wasn't there in the tires, and you really couldn't follow as well as the run wore on. So it's going to be very important that these drivers maximize their time on the fresh tires, on the new tires, and on the lower fuel load. So I think that's what you need to keep your eye on as Beaudefort and Andreas Eick are going head-to-head now.
What a day this would be for Beaudefort if he could beat not 1 but 2 Team Talent machines. Beaudefort around the outside does have a bit of draft as they build the speed on the entry into turn 1, but Eick will slide through the corner a little bit better. Beaudefort fights it back, but has his nose chopped off. But what a monster of a performance so far. He's not done just yet.
No, Beaudefort's car looks really, really strong here. Again, I think that it's the strongest car other than the i5G Quartet up at the front, or what will be the front of this race. And more importantly, Beaudefort and Eick are both still 1 lap down here, so they're still in the danger zone. And Beaudefort, in getting around Eick quickly, it will allow him to sort of go after Matt Taylor, who's only a couple of seconds up the road from them.
And speaking of Taylor and the cars yet to have pitted, Ribeiro gets passed by Traino first. Demerit, this most recent time on the run out of turn number 2. tires making a bit more of a difference when it's at the beginning and the end of the runs rather than the 9 or 10 lap difference that we saw. Car low off of pit road, or rather out of turn 2. Kevin Burrell smacks the inside wall, and once more we stay under green. There it is though, there's the caution.
And that is going to trap John Bodefor, Andreas Eick, and Andrew Wood and Marco Brazil all 1 lap down. So very, very unfortunate for that group of drivers. They're going to be all the way at the back of the field now.
And for Burrell, he's going to be slumped, somewhat frustrated because it's self-inflicted. It's out of turn 4, and just wobbles up high, maybe a little bit too much commitment inside of the weight jacker, and at a point where the car was always uncomfortable, but instead of being out of turn 2, it's out of turn 4.
Yeah, you could tell the car just wasn't turning there for Burrell. He was trying to turn it with the steering wheel. He was trying to turn it with the throttle, and it just wasn't responding. He was just always going into that outside wall there.
Well, that changes things. Cars that were moments away from entering their pit window will be thinking about boxing, and hypothetically they're not far away from thinking about the idea of a splash and dash at the end of this race. Almost at the halfway marker, you can't get it done without coming back down pit road, but your eyes start to think about what you can do at the end of the race to minimize your time on the lane. Here come the cars now. DeTrano and Demerit roll to pit road.
No, they don't. They stay out. All the i5G cars are going to stay out, and I think that just goes to show you just how important track position is, that they didn't even think about coming down pit road there. But the big thing is this has really come up i5G here. The 4 i5G cars will cycle back to the front, and their biggest competitors throughout the race so far are all going to be at the very back of this field.
We'll get you an update on the order once it cycles out. Bodefor, Eick, Wood will all cycle back around along with Marco Brazil to the tail end of the field. Burrell becoming the latest of our retirees. Rodrigo Franzoni did retire after a speeding penalty. Other retirees include Julian Pastor and Ken Cram. For Demerit, is being second maybe not the worst idea in the world, Andrew? Thoughts on that as a possibility, as noted in our YouTube chat?
It's not the worst thing in the world for sure. The one thing that Demerit has to be cognizant of is definitely that he can't let Brandon Trano get too far out on this restart. He can't afford to be chasing him throughout this next stint, because we saw that he went long on the first stint. He's probably going to go a little bit longer than Brandon Trano and hope that he can get it done on pit road, but at the same time that might be a little bit of false hope, because you did see, even though it is only 3 or 4 tenths of a second a lap, a fairly significant undercut from Trano the first time, and he'll probably get that undercut the second time again.
Back-to-back ovals after this. 7 days from now, we'll head over to the Iowa Speedway. Very, very different, but a place that you also have to work very hard to set up passes. In terms of building cars, though, Andrew, how radically different are they?
Oh, it's an incredibly different proposition. Iowa is one of those tracks where you're doing all sorts of really weird things to the car to make it turn through the corner, and then hope that it doesn't hit one of the bumps in turn 2 and turn you all the way into the wall. But it's a very unique track in terms of even the short track setups. Very different from almost anything else that we do on this service.
Back-to-back road courses, then back-to-back ovals, but of course flip-flopping back and forth will go all the way to upstate New York in week 12 of this championship to wrap things up and put a bow on everything that we've seen. After today, though, we will firmly remain inside of the USA. Should be a fun one. Remember, RaceSpotTV, your home of this championship. Monday nights for IndyCars, what more could you ask for? So Trano will be in the lead of the race once we get back around next time by. The cars will be released to be thrown to the back of the field. We'll get locked and loaded and back underway on lap 67 of 133. Demerit, Steele, second and third, Lichtenberg fourth, and Taylor up 7 into 5th spot. What does he have to do now, thinking about the rest of this race?
Yeah, this is certainly a great opportunity for Matt Taylor. All of the difficulties that he was facing getting through traffic before, that's gone. So now it's really, we're going to see whether or not Matt Taylor has anything for those i5G cars in front of him. And of course, he is on those newer tires, so that will give him a slight advantage for the rest of this race. Definitely not the worst position to be in if you're Matt Taylor.
Other notables to talk about: Isaac Smith, 16 spots forward from where he started. Gerhard's +6 as well, and Glennick's +7. Brazil, your biggest loser, he's lost 11 spots after being trapped 1 lap down. Andreas Eich in a similar situation, lost 9 after starting up inside of those top 2 rows. Kevin Burrell has indeed become the most recent retiree. 23 has become 19. Front row has flipped around. It's no longer Christopher Demerit that has controlled the vast majority of this race at the front. Instead, it's Brandon Traino. His qualifying dominance has come to a close. With clean air being so important, will he dominate the rest of this race? As we get past the halfway marker, Brandon Traino picks up the throttle. We're racing once more at Motegi. Couple cars maybe caught napping there. Christian Steele immediately under fire from Brendan Lichtenberg. Taylor feeling the pressure from behind. David Porcelli, and look above, it's getting dark once more.
And that cloud cover will definitely come as a relief to some, particularly those drivers at the back of the field who weren't able to take a pit stop but still had to make up their lap with the wave around. So any little bit that they can do to save their tires, any couple of degrees that it'll go down here will be welcome for them. But up at the front, it's all about Brandon Traino leading Brendan Lichtenberg. Here on screen, though, Andreas Eich fighting his way. That's Aaron McQuarrie on the inside of him.
John Beaudefort trying to follow on through, but now in front, it'll be Laura Gerhard. That gives Andreas Eich a moment of hesitation. In fact, excuse me, I think that David Henger, the laps car, the 21, might even be Jeff Yeager, excuse me. Plenty of traffic management issues as they look to go 3 wide midway through turns 1 and 2. They're fighting for position. The 21 can't do much except run its line and run its speed. Beaudefort down low on McQuarrie.
And I gotta say, I think Beaudefort might be the one that I feel the most sorry for in this situation, because he started in 15th, got himself all the way up to 5th position, and now is back in 14th position as we have a car that's McQuarrie into the wall off of turn 4.
Should not bring out the caution, despite the fact that the right front is trying to run away from the rest of the car. Aaron McQuarrie becomes the latest in a long line of incidents, solo car incidents, that has not been greeted with the immediate interruption of your caution flag. Across the line, 63 laps to go. Traino already 8/10 clear of Demerit. It's a quite considerable lead, given that we've been, back underway for 4 laps or counting.
And one of the things about the caution flag laps is it does cool down the tires a fair bit around here. And while that's good for the tires in terms of longevity, it does take them a lap or 2 to fire back up. And when you have the aero push, you need all the grip you can get out of the tires. So I think Demerit probably just a little bit with the cold tires is what's leading Brandon Traino to be able to pull out the lead that he is so far.
Well, grab a look at what happened back here, but immediately you note that it's getting darker in the bottom right portion of your screen. Dirty error factor, but always in trouble and never seemed in any sort of position where that car was going to be pointed back on the line where it needed to be, Andrew.
Yeah, it all started really in turn 3 with David Hanger in front, and he just didn't do a good job of anticipating where the car in front would be, and then tried to get back to the throttle and just was a little too greedy there in terms of staying with that throttle. Should have just lifted off and continue to just rotate the car.
And again, look at how bright it's gotten. Sun baking down on the track once more. Battle side by side between Crane and Glennick's potentially for 8th and 9th position. Crane, the Canadian, holds on for now. Isaac Smith splits the satellite racing machines with Porcelli slightly further up the road. Andreas Eich continues to dice his way forward, now up to 11, and is not looking too far back. He's only about 5/10 back on Rashad Craig.
I just got around Laura Gerhardt there, and John Beaudefort now working on the power slide driver. It's going to be very important for these drivers on on the wave around to really do whatever they can to get by as many drivers as they can as early as they can in this stint, because again, you're going to see the tires continue to fall off as the run goes on. Passing will get increasingly more difficult and the cars will get more spread out, so it's very important to make hay while the sun shines here for all those drivers on the wave around.
That was a nice committed pass by Bodefer as well. Looked down low, and even though for a moment it seemed like Gerhard was going to be able to fend, exit of turn 4, car got loose, Bodefer picked up the pieces, slides on through on the low line. Ike still working down low on Rashad Craig. That number 14 not looked comfortable all of the race so far. On to lap 76 they go, Ike sliding forward.
Yeah, and I've been surprised that Craig hasn't looked stronger here. The last time we were here, if I recall correctly, the Indy Alliance Racing team seemed to be a little bit stronger than what Craig is showing right now, but it is probably the case that just with this higher track temperature, they're just not working the way that they were hoping for, and could be one of those drivers on that lower downforce that had been observed earlier as well.
Speed midway through turns 1 and 2, upwards of 200 miles an hour. Oh, excuse me, nowhere near 200 miles an hour. It's when they get through the straights that they're closer to 200 miles an hour. My timing screen is going all sorts of wonky today, but as Ike continues to look down low, they're costing each other some time to Glenix up the road. 1 second, the gap in building. Ike finally gets it done, but now has got to think forward, because already on lap 21 on his stint, the cars around him working lap 14.
Yeah, and this has been good progress so far from Ike and Bodefer, though, not letting Ike anywhere out of his sight. So they seem to be going through the pack really nicely together. So that's definitely what they need to do to try and salvage some points out of this. Meanwhile, up at the front, Brandon Trano, 1.5 second lead on Christopher Demerit. Steele another 1.5 seconds back of him. So really strong out here at the top end of this field.
And we looked at the track map earlier and we saw how spread out and distributed the drivers were. You can see now the gap out of turn 4 basically all the way to the midpoint of turn 1 and 2, so give it maybe 25, 30 more laps, basically a full cycle of pit stops, and that's when the traffic will start to be a factor. At least for now, it's Trano that is controlling the field. On lap 80 of 133, this time by will be 53 laps to go for your race leader. It's Andrew Wood. Well, that's not where you want to be, and after a great weekend, car exploding as the luck runs out.
Yeah, that is an unfortunate end to what was a stellar weekend for Andrew Wood. Looks like another victim of that turn 4 exit there. Meanwhile, I just do want to touch on one thing about our leaders. The interesting thing for me with the leaders right now, Arjuna, where the gap is. The gap isn't after the 4 i5G cars. The gap is after Matt Taylor. Taylor is really holding on to the back of Brendan Lichtenberg pretty well here.
Another driver making a statement here today. Let's grab a look at what happened then to Andrew Wood as we work through turn 4. Remember, the first couple of incidents all on turn 2. Since then, it's all been about turn 4, and this time a little bit too much weight jacker, low down through the corner. You can't blame any dirty air for that one. All self-inflicted.
Yeah, the car was just rotating way too well on that corner exit, and I think it was just a case of Wood was getting a little bit desperate seeing Bodefer and Ike carving through the traffic the way they were. He was still behind Laura Gerhardt at the time, so I think he was just getting a little bit desperate to find his way through traffic, and too much weight jacker, too much rotation, and unfortunately, day done for Andrew Wood.
As the kids would say, this is definitely one of the races. It has not been the most scintillating of races, but this is one of those tracks where it challenges the drivers in so many different ways. It's challenging Andreas Ike in a perseverance sort of a way. He's having to work his way forward, and down the inside he'll look on Robin Glenix, not going to get through here.
Yeah, I've been in this type of race before, particularly in Ike's position. For me, it was a self-inflicted speeding penalty that I went to the back of the field on. And this is one of the tracks where if you have the car under you and you understand what you're doing, you can be really, really fascinating as the driver to find your way through the field and to carve your way back up there. So I think definitely more entertaining from the cockpits of the likes of Andreas Ike and John Bodefer than it is necessarily for us watching this, but it is definitely a challenge and one that can be a lot of fun if you're a driver.
To quote an unnamed driver pre-race, this race is going to violate the Geneva Convention. I don't know what he meant by that. I don't know who was going to be the ones in the hot seat, but I disagree, at least from a driver's perspective. I do think this is one of those races where it's not the always most rewarding sort of racing, but that's sometimes just the racing that you get. We're watching Athon back. Adam Crane, Andreas Eick, and Glenix Bodefor and Rashad Craig all working down in towards turn number 1. They're about 1.8 back from Isaac Smith, another driver that's hanging onto the coattails of bigger teams. This time it's David Porcelli that's towing him around up in 6th position. Taylor is starting to slide backwards from Lichtenberg. That gap now 1.3 and building. At a track like this, Andrew, how much of a difference does setup truly make?
It does make a fair bit of difference, although at a certain point there isn't too many more gains that you can make. Particularly when you have a track temp as hot as this, you just can't follow after a certain point in the run, so there's not a lot that many of these drivers can do at this point. But like, you do see the likes of Andreas Eick and John Bodefor able to carve their way through the field even though they're on these older tires, so it's quite clear that there is a setup advantage to be had there for teams that can put in the effort.
And remarkably, after his moment, Aaron McQuarrie is back out on track, so he won't be an immediate retiree. We'll question the extent of the repairs, but Andrew Wood indeed has called it quits. So 23 now becomes 18. One by one, they are starting to drop off, but with just about 20-odd minutes left in this race, do not expect too many more of them to be completely out of the picture. If we were to get more calamity, we would see plenty more yellows as well to interrupt the rhythm of the race, maybe mix things up at the front. Speaking of mixing things up, the gap's closing very slightly. This time, across the line was about 1.7 seconds. It closed by a full tenth last time by, but Trainer responds, picks the pace up.
Yeah, I think you're sort of seeing that demerit at the front end of this field. He's sort of equalized in terms of aero wash and draft ability, so basically he's going to hover right around this point for the remainder of this stint. The question for me will be who comes in first, who's going to be the first driver to blink, because we are getting towards that time where you have to start thinking about when do you come down pit lane, what are you going to look at for fuel strategy, because we are only 40 laps remaining, or 42 laps remaining in this race at this point.
It is starting to wind itself down as Eick and Crane battle for 8th position. Eick down low with Crane up high. Brandon Traynor will be the first down to pit road for the final time today. And what does he do by pitting early? Well, he undercuts those behind him, but maybe more importantly, he's put himself in the danger zone.
Put himself in the danger zone, and this is probably on the earlier end of what he would have wanted here. We were seeing, like, he's definitely within the fuel window, but it's by no means as comfortable as some of the other drivers are going to be in terms of making it from here on this stop.
Traino still in the box, yet to drop and roll, while Demerit already across the line and into turn 1. That's what we talk about when we talk about the danger zone. If you're new to the race and you haven't seen what we've already seen today, you box early, you get a little bit more speed out of the tires. However, because you go a lap down, if a caution flies now, you put yourself in a tricky pickle, where at best you're at the tail end of the field and have to work yourself through the rest of those cars on the lead lap. Worst case scenario, you do not get back onto the leading lap. We started with 23, we are down to 18. Retirees include Andrew Wood, Kevin Birrell, Rodrigo Franzoni, Julian Pastor, and Ken Cram. John Bodefor will be down onto pit road as well, and he's someone that knows just how important it is to stay out of the danger zone.
Yeah, he's already been bitten once here today, but I do like Bodefor coming down here just a little bit early. He was having a little bit of trouble with Eick and Crane in front of him. So now he's going to be able to get a little bit of an undercut here. As long as we don't get another caution, this should be a good strategy here for the number 17 car.
We saw the speed in the first part of the day as Robin Glenix has, calling that a bobble would be an understatement. He very much, I think, flirted with the wall. Now, how close did he get will determine how much damage there is on the right side of his car, but he builds up the speed once more, sliding backwards into Craig, Gerhard, and Brazil. The final cars left in the leading lap. John Bodefor picking up the pace. Brandon Traino lost time by 27.476. Your race leader at 27.786.
Yeah, so that's a significant difference for Brandon Traino over Christopher Demeritte. The key will be, does a caution come out here? Because as long as Demeritte's out front and Traino is back one lap down in 13th, anything can happen here. So he's got to be on pins and needles here, hoping that nothing happens.
Take that look at what happened to Glenix on the exit of turn 4. Well, he definitely hits the wall, but as lightly as you could dare.
Yeah, he'll be lucky to have gotten away with that. I suspect he'll have at least a little bit of floor damage, maybe a little bit of suspension damage on that right front as well. Certainly he doesn't seem like he's too affected by that, but at the same time he lost probably about a second and a half just by having to get out of the throttle there and having to get his speed back up.
Saw how it bounced off the wall as well. That would have absorbed some of the momentum as well. 2.6 splits Demeritte from Steele. Lichtenberg even further back, 3.4 the gap between second and third, and Taylor has started to slide backwards. Late commitment from Demeritte, but he makes it in nice and tidy onto pit road. Yeah,
that was Demeritte splitting it as fine as he possibly could there on pit entry. But I do think that undercut that Brandon Traino's had so far is going to be pay dividends, and I think you're going to see a 3 or 4 second gap here when it all shakes out.
So we'll look at both of them. Demeritte in the box, Traino already with tires where they need to be and in the rhythm. Out of turn 4, he'll come. Car peeling out of the way in terms of the lap traffic. Demeritte drops and rolls back onto track and getting back up to speed, but with the momentum, Traino will sail around the outside. It's not even close. Traino net leader of the race.
And it's going to be, as I said, I think 3 or 4 seconds by the time they all get back up to speed. The one good thing for Christopher Demeritte is he does have a teammate giving him a little bit of draft, but I believe that's Brendan Lichtenberg, so that will help him get back in touch with Brandon Traino. So it's not the worst thing that could possibly happen for Demeritte, but at the same time, it's definitely not the best case scenario either.
So for the next 33 odd laps, for Traino, for Demeritte, all they're hoping for is the caution not to have flown until we get the rest of the field down onto pit lane for the final time. Left side of screen, you can see the stint length so far. Steele, Lichtenberg, 48 laps, the longest left on track. Taylor on back, 38, 37, in that ballpark. Ribeiro as well, yet to come down pit road for the final time, but Traino, Demeritte, Beaudefort, and Ike have all blinked, have all made their way onto pit road. And another undercut that's significant is the 1.3 second advantage that the Alpine Stars geodesic racing machine has over the team talent number 4.
I was just about to say, Arjuna, that was a massive undercut that John Beaudefort got on Andreas Ike, and that's definitely going to pay dividends come the end of this race. But you can also just see with that interval time just how far back being in the pack has left John Beaudefort compared to Christopher Demeritte. We were talking about them, or about Beaudefort potentially being one of the drivers that can keep up with the I5G team. Well, he's now 17 seconds back of Demeritte just simply because he couldn't get around all that traffic in between them. Meanwhile, Brandon Lichtenberg and Matt Taylor both down on pit lane. Surprising to see Taylor down this time by, in fact.
Yeah, Taylor was one of those cars that we thought might run longer, but maybe he was pushing the tires to keep tempo with Lichtenberg. Maybe that's why his pace was good, sliding the rubber a little bit more than he would have hoped to have done so. Behind Lichtenberg, Christian Steele will come in as well, so it's a busy time on pit road. Many cars rolling their way down for the final time today.
And I will say that having Taylor come down pit road right now, that will be a sigh of relief for some of the drivers like Traino, who were behind Taylor on the track. Now it'll mean that they're out of that danger zone. But again, Lichtenberg, Taylor, Beaudefort, Ike, they're all in that danger zone. And I suspect that you'll see a number of the drivers still out on track, like David Porcelli, like Adam Crane, going fairly long here.
So Steele up and away. Rolls off of the limiter, should emerge a couple of seconds in front of Brendan Lichtenberg. Isaac Smith will roll to pit lane after what's been a good run for him in the number 20. Looks like a bit of a miscue there with where his pit box was, but we'll find it at the second time of asking. And roll himself forward. Here's the guy, second in the championship, has worked his way through the field quietly on strategy. Now, it's not necessarily worked out the way that he would have wanted as he scrolls over to lap 43 on the run. Should be down on pit road in the next 10, maybe 15 laps. There's no real hope that he's going to try something crazy and go to the end from here.
Yeah, certainly not. This is definitely the last gap for David Porcelli. He's just going to try and ride it out as long as he possibly can, see if a caution comes out, and see if he can trap a number of drivers one lap down, and then that will result in him potentially cementing a better finish than he otherwise would have. Meanwhile, we've got a little bit of a battle going on here for that 11th place right now. Isaac Smith came back out in 11th, but John Bodefar and Andreas Eich are right hot on his tail right now.
So Smith now has two of the hard chargers through the previous cycle tucking up behind him. Gap up the road from Taylor to Lichtenberg is only 1.9. If anything, Taylor closed with a matching pit cycle to Lichtenberg. One lap offset, but almost identical there. Lichtenberg not completely out of the woods. Out of the woods though, Traino, Demerit and Steele back onto the leading lap with the cycle of pit stops playing out as they have.
And again, sigh of relief from all three of them, and it'll be Lichtenberg, Taylor, and the rest of them on pins and needles while we wait for David Porcelli to come down pit lane, which we do expect in the next 5 or so laps, I would think, at the most. But the real question here is, you're seeing on your timing screen, Brandon Traino, Christopher Demerit, they're pretty close on track now. Demerit has been able to close up just a little bit on Brandon Traino, and we could have a battle here for the lead very soon.
Check in with our track map as these two cars work on the exit of turn 2. You've got the 21, the 19, Gil Ribeiro and Jeff Yeager directly in front. After that, a nice big gap up the road to the 22, almost more than half the length of the pit straight. That's the thing that Traino's got to look for now. On the back of Brazil into turn 1, he'll carve down low. Brazil will try and hold up on the higher line. Now Brazil's already one lap down, so common courtesy maybe would be to let the car in the lead fly on by. Doesn't seem to be that easy. Traino's having to work for it down low in turn 3.
Marco Brazil definitely not one known to let anyone go by easily, whether they're on the same lap or on a different lap, and certainly not making it easy here on Brandon Traino. Meanwhile, Christopher Demerit's cheering Brazil on to a certain extent, I would expect, just to hoping to be able to use the draft of both of these drivers and get just that little bit closer to Brandon Traino here. Well,
Traino finally does it. Took about a lap and a bit, but Traino gets in front of Brazil, who might try and fight that one back around the outside as Gil Ribeiro will come on down to the pit road. Porcelli, Crane, and Glenix, Craig, Gerhard, the 5 yet to have come down to the lane. So we still watch slightly wider line being taken by Christopher Demerit. We know he likes a higher line at Indy. Not sure how well a higher groove works here, given that it's really just more distance around the track. More displeasure potentially for Demerit, because now Brazil blocks his run to try and get past 2-lapped cars. Gap continues to grow.
Yeah, and I can tell you that the high line, especially on the entrance to one, does really work when you're behind several drivers. You can get a lot of your turning done early on in the corner and sort of diamond off the corner a little bit. So that is definitely a viable line, but at the same time, what it doesn't allow you to do is really get a good run on the driver in front of you to get past them, especially if they're not making it easy on you, which Brazil is not. Meanwhile, Porcelli and Glenix both down on pit lane, so that only leaves Crane, Craig, and Gerhardt still out on track from that, or still yet to have their final pit stop, and that will lift a number of drivers out of that danger zone, Arjuna.
It's still going on. Demerit's got to find a way past. The gap is up over a second forward. You can see the Steely rocket machine filing in behind. Steele's joined the party. Might think about fighting for second when all things are said and done. Demerit finally gets by. Steele's next in line to work on Marco Brazil. Traino has a bit more breathing room as Crane and Gerhard down to pit road, this time by.
And the thing about Christian Steele as well is that he's got a number of laps fresher tires as well, so he's definitely got the freshest tires of the top three, so he might be the one to challenge at this point. But just as Brazil didn't make it very easy on either Treno or Demerit, he's not making it very easy on Steele either.
Well, it wouldn't be fair across the teammates as a car rolls off of pit road. Steele, though, gets by at the second time of asking through turn 1 and 2. That purple machine finds itself only 1 second back from Demerit. Demerit's closed again on Brandon Treno. You can see in front of them, though, clean air with 15 to go. It's an i5G, net 1, 2, 3, 4. Rashad Craig, the only car left to come down and box.
Yeah, and something here has happened to John Bodefor there, Arjuna. He's well behind Andreas Eich now.
Lost about 1.1 seconds as Craig will come into the box. Pit stop cycle will roll to an end. From here, we know all cars should be good on fuel. Bodefor, I wonder if he just now got a bit of damage or something, because last time by 28.007 surely indicates he ran himself up into the wall.
It definitely seems that way. He's definitely not running the lap times that we were expecting or seeing from him earlier on in this race. And the second satellite racing driver of Adam Crane looks to be closing quite well on him at this point. So I think it was just a mistake from John Bodefor there, a momentary lapse of concentration that's ruined what was otherwise a good recovery drive there.
Still plenty of positives to take away from this one. 3 cars inside of the top 3 bubble, though, as Crane and Bodefor battle for 9th. It's the battle for the lead. That's the one to watch. 14 to go. Demerit 3 car lengths back from Treno.
Look at Demerit get in on Brandon Treno into turn 4 there. He's driving that car in for all it's worth. He's going to use as much draft as he possibly can, try and get some clean air through turn 1. Then we'll see if he might be able to make a move here into turn 3, because he's definitely closer than he's been at any other point in this run.
Up and under, is it going to give him the opportunity to look down low, side by side for the race lead for the first time tonight? Your pole man takes back the lead of the race. Does Brandon Treno have the tires to go back and fight for all he's worth? 12 to go.
And don't count out that number 5 car of Christian Steele either. He's just sitting there in the popcorn position watching these two battle, but he is far from out of this at only 7/10 back from your leader, Christopher Demerit. So we've got a 3-way fight for the lead here, Arjuna.
12 cars left on the leading lap. Will we have late race dramas to shake things up? 2 cautions so far today in a race that's seen many more incidents. Only a couple worthy, though. Slowing the tempo down and allowing those behind to close the gap up forward. Still split by just 9/10 of a second. The top 3 cars. Lichtenberg's now safe in 4th, 3 seconds clear of Taylor in 5th. Who's in no man's land. Smith looking slightly backwards. Andreas Eich continues to go on the offense. Now 9/10, almost a full second back is Brandon Treno. His tires are going. Demerit's running clear.
Yeah, I was going to say, Brandon Treno's tires are definitely not looking good right now. You can tell he just isn't able to keep the car down the way that Christian Steele and Christopher Demerit is, and that's just all down to the tire differential. So we hadn't seen a pass for the lead on track all race, but we finally did see one, and it just goes to show you that there is the ability to draft here around Motegi again, and there is the ability to pass for the lead of the race with a little bit of tire differential. So now Steele around Brandon Treno in turns 3 and 4. Let's see if Steele can reel back in Christopher Demerit now that he's set free.
Yeah, I'll play devil's advocate just for a moment. Yes, we have seen a pass for the lead, but it was a single pass for the lead. It required a tire differential of about 6 laps time. And I do wonder as well if, given the lack of passing earlier in the race, maybe Brandon Treno pushing a bit harder in this final portion to just try and give himself a gap to Demerit. Did not play out, though, the way he was expecting. 8 to go, 1.4 clear. Demerit seems to have moved at the perfect time. Does not seem like there's an opportunity for him to be closed up on. Instead, we look at the satellite racing duo, Porcelli Crane. Much fresher tires, a little bit quicker than Eich in front of them.
Yeah, this is definitely a team that is looking a lot better now than they were at the beginning of this race, and using the fresh tires to their advantage. And then one other thing that I wanted to talk about with Demerit and Traino is I wonder how much that battle with Marco Brazil really did cost Traino, because he had to use up a lot of tires to get around Brazil. Yes, Demerit did as well, but he had the fresher tires and the lighter load of fuel, so it definitely, I think that could have also played a factor in it.
Time's running out, even though there's a 16-lap difference in tires. Porcelli not able to close up onto Ike. If anything, last time by, the gap opened up and Crane sees maybe his teammate sliding backwards. He'll look down low, not going to get it done this time around. With the laps ticking away, it's 6 to go for your race leader, who's winding it out of turn 4. 5 to go this time by. Crane gets in front of Porcelli in that battle for 7th position on track, but from pole, dominated the first portion of the race, didn't pit initially on the caution, lost the lead in the pit stop cycles after that, and then bided his time, waited with the tires. And you said earlier that on this type of a track, there's not many better than Christopher Demerit.
Yeah, it's been a clinical performance from Christopher Demerit. He did exactly what he needed to do. I don't think he was ever very panicked. Even when Brandon Traino got around him, he just went around and did what he had to do, and then put himself in the position to capitalize on this final stint, and he did exactly what he needed to do, got around Traino, and is well clear now. Christian Steele with 4 to go.
Traino, 2.8 back. I wonder if maybe there's some fuel. You talked about that Traino was on the bubble. Has Traino just lost a lot of time, or is there a fuel concern with that car? Right up on board, 4th into 5th.
Well, he did just let the lap car get in front of him here, so I do wonder if maybe that fuel consideration is coming in. He was, of course, one of the first drivers to come in, and if there was a small miscalculation, he could be fuel saving here. As you see, he's just not trying to get around anyone at this point.
Yeah, this looks more fuel than anything. Just the way the car, he's using the car, I should say. The balance doesn't look off. It just looks as though he's controlling it. 4.5 clear of Lichtenberg behind to complete the I5G 1 through 4. Wonder if maybe it was a similar situation for John Bodefor, because he was only 3 laps later, than Brandon Traino. So maybe there's some fuel stuff that's gone on there. But coming through turn 4, white flag in hand, Demerit 1.5 clear of Christian Steele.
And it's been a clinical drive from Christopher Demerit. Again, he's just did everything that he possibly could to win this race, did exactly what he needed to do, and this is going to be a justified win for Demerit.
1, 2, 3 in qualifying. Doesn't get much better than that, but a dominant performance for Team I5G makes it a 1, 2, 3, and 4. Christopher Demerit will lead I5G to victory in the land of the rising sun. Christian Steele will come across the line in 2nd. Brandon Traino will nurse his car, maybe light on fuel, to the final step of the podium. Brendan Lichtenberg for Team I5G rounds out the top 4. Give a shout out to the likes of Matt Taylor, Isaac Smith. Big gains for them in a race such as this. David Porcelli, John Bodefor. Other names to show some speed in a race controlled by one team and one team alone. New update in terms of our aero configurations, but it's a very similar race to what we've seen many a time before, Andrew.
It has, as the I5G team comes for the photo finish here, and I do think you're right about the fuel issue, because Brandon Traino is definitely not joining his teammates on the line for this photo op as Brendan Lichtenberg slides through there, but Traino going backwards down pit lane here.
Yeah, that's suboptimal. To quote our own Lewis McClade, they'll have their own fun, as I5G are known to do. No donuts here today. Lichtenberg, will he keep it out of the wall? Just about. Maybe not in any sort of condition to go back racing after that. 133 laps though. It was a slightly longer race than some anticipated with the 2 cautions that we had today, but it was Christopher Demerit victorious by 1.5 seconds at the line. Your 2022 iRacing Indy 500 winner Christian Steele 2nd, while Brandon Traino across the line in fuel-saving mode in 3rd spot. Brendan Lichtenberg, 4th, with Matt Taylor 5th. Isaac Smith, our biggest mover of the day, plus 17 up into 6th. Andreas Ike recovering up into 7th after being trapped a lap down. Adam Crane, David Porcelli did not have much pace in that satellite racing machine. They still get top 10 finishes on the board. John Bodefor, the Alpine Stars Geodesic Racing number 17. What a day it was for him. Maybe not the result, but the performance to show us he means business. Robin Glennox, Rashad Craig, final cars left on the leading lap with Laura Gerhard and Marco Brazil 1 lap down. Jeff Yeager, Gil Ribeiro nursed their cars 2 laps down to the finish, while David Henger scrambled to secure a 17th position, but behind him, many a retiree. Aaron McQuarrie, Andrew Wood, Kevin Birrell make up the rest of the top 20, with Rodrigo Franzoni, Julian Pastor, and Ken Cram. The rest of the 23 that took to the start, even if they did not make it to the end. Well, with that said, we head straight down to victory lane, where Christopher Demerit doesn't race much on a Monday night, but when he does, he tends to go quite well. This time it's a victory, and Chris talked to us about the second stint, where you were patient, you bided your time, and you pounced at the very end of this race.
Yeah, it wasn't much I could do. I kind of had to wait for, the only chance was to wait for a mistake, or heavy traffic, which almost happened. But yeah, Trano just kind of zoned out for a moment, looking at the relative to check something. I got damaged, so that made the delta big enough that I could actually get by, but otherwise than that, we were just stuck in line. Trano jumped me, of course, but good result for the team, at least.
Oh, he did have. We thought it was fuel based on how he was driving.
No,
damage
unfortunately not.
Yeah, damage makes sense as well. In terms of the race, in terms of the package and improvement, did you enjoy it? That's probably the more pertinent question.
I always like driving Motegi. Racing it is a very different question, but it feels about the same to me, honestly. It's which is kind of unfortunate, but different tracks have different problems, and this one is just hard to close up to people.
Iowa next week. Are we going to see you, or are you going to run away again?
To be determined.
Give us your thoughts on Iowa, assuming that you are going to be around.
I'm looking forward to it.
I like it. I like it. Christopher Demerit victorious here today. Congrats, Chris. Hopefully we see you 7 days from now.
Thanks. Yeah, see you guys.
It was a good day for Team i5G. We'll roll on down to the second step of the podium, where Christian Steele is standing by. Christian, that was a fun little race.
Yeah, it was. I'm really surprised I got second there.
From your perspective, I mean, how hard was it to follow? You were the second car in line, behind 2 in front, of course, so you had a little bit more dirty air. Were you able to stay close? How hard are you having to work the in-car tools?
Yeah, I was working it pretty hard. I was surprised with how much I was able to catch up, though, in terms of lap time and following, because at the last stop there, I hit it like 20 laps later than Trano and Chris, and from there I was actually able to follow for a little bit, but I reached a point where I kind of cliffed. So yeah, it was pretty difficult, but at the same time there's a lot you have to manage, so overall it's still pretty enjoyable.
Might be the last time that we see you on a Monday night for a while. How much fun has it been to be back in the community grind, racing every Monday night?
Oh, it's great. I've really enjoyed it, and yeah, I'm looking forward to completing a full season for the first time in, I want to say, 4 years. So it's been a while, and yeah, no, I've really enjoyed it. I feel like the competition is great. Maybe not as strong as in SOF tonight, but there's been some really good racing, especially on the road courses. I think that gets me really excited to come out every weekend and race with all these guys.
It was still a 4,000 something SOF. It's still good. Congratulations on the podium, Christian. We'll see you hopefully soon.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Christian Steele. Second step of the podium for him in that Steely rocket machine. Let's jump on over then to the man that was in the race lead before he bonked himself. Brandon, we're disappointed with your mistake, but looked like an interesting race until then.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go kick my dog. It's kind of embarrassing, to be honest. I mean, we pretty much had it locked up, and I was just looking at the relative to see when the leader was pitting, what our gap was, and just to see where lap traffic was kind of playing out, and just open the wheel too much on exit and hit the wall. So yeah, kind of embarrassing to throw a win away like that, but it happens to the best of us.
in terms of the team, how fun was it to actually have the majority of you guys out in force here today, to be able to control and run 1 through 4?
Yeah, it was good. We brought a really good setup. Chris made a really good qualifying setup, and I put a lot of work into the race setup. So it showed for sure, and we definitely brought some speed for sure. So that was nice to see.
So this race is over. It's Iowa up next. Is that something that you're looking forward to a little bit more?
Yeah, Iowa is one of my favorite tracks in this car. Outside of the absolute abuse that the right front tire takes, it can be a lot of fun, and hopefully, next week is a pretty good race. Last time we ran there, I didn't do so well. If I remember correctly, I went spinning off of turn 2, trying to go for broke, but. Yeah, Iowa's always been good to us as a team and me as a whole. So hopefully we can have another good result, and I cannot throw a win away again.
Well, we'll be there to catch it if it does. Congratulations on the run, Brandon. We'll see you in 7 days' time.
Thanks, guys.
And Trainer will wrap up our post-race coverage. Always great to talk to the drivers, get their thoughts and perspectives, and sometimes to get some crucial information, such as that we all make mistakes. Brandon Trainer ran himself into a wall.
Yeah, it just goes to show that even a multi-time Indy 500 champion can have a moment of weakness and just carelessly hit the wall after looking at his relatives. So it's good to know that it happens to the aliens as well as the mere mortals of the rest of us. But right now, I think all these drivers, they're going to be very excited to put Twin Ring Motegi in the rearview mirror. They've gotten through this race, and now it's going to be a really fun race next weekend at Iowa, I think. Yeah,
let's talk about it. July 18th, we go to the cornfields. This blistering, fast-paced, short oval is going to be fascinating. July 18th, same time, same place. Should be interesting with the weather conditions as well. Is it warm? Is it cool? It's a place that always tends to put on a good show.
Absolutely, it does, both in the real world and on the iRacing service as well. And again, it's another one of those multi-groove facilities as well. So you'll get people running different lines. You'll get people on different fuel strategies. You'll get undercuts. You'll get overcuts. You'll get all sorts of action. And as Brandon talked about, the right front always seems to scream at Iowa, and it's going to be a fascinating race to watch for sure.
It was 133 laps tonight, but the intensity will rise 7 days from now when we go racing for 160 laps at Iowa. The rest of the season, we stay inside of the US, across the country. We go to the finest tracks that America has to offer. It's going to be fun, and nowhere else can you catch it than live on RaceSpotTV. And with that said, we thank you for joining us. As always, Monday Night IndyCar's just the start of a busy week on RaceSpotTV. This Wednesday, the Lionheart IndyCar Series is back. It heads to the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Join us for the action. Join us for the fun. We'll see you, though, 7 days from now at the Iowa Speedway to hit the halfway mark of 2022, Season 3 in the iRacing IndyCar Open Championship. It was I5G domination today, but plenty of unsurprising names surprised us in a very good way. Christopher Demerit celebrates, though, a winner at Motegi.